Okay, so the following is just a brief sort of, to use my favorite keyword, the following is a brief freestyle discussion and discourse on the obscenities and the absurdities, which is to say the inadequacies and the complete unacceptability, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or anybody. But I'm going to say in this commentary, especially as a North Carolina Democrat, one cannot and should not support gubernatorial candidate Joshua Stein, who likes us to call him Josh. I just for some reason, I guess people can make fun of the name Dawson. The name Josh to me, there's in fact are at least two other Democratic governors in Hawaii and Pennsylvania, I believe, named Josh. And so I suppose, there's a kind of lowest common denominator of names on the ballot. Excuse me, all the Joshes out there. I'm just joshing with you. This is a criticism of Joshua Stein in video format on the World Wide Web. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the statements of Josh Stein and read him in his own words, and examine critically whether what he is saying really makes as much sense as he wants it to. Because what I'm going to tell you is that what I'm going to say is that as I say, Mr. Stein is a fascist, in that his vision for North Carolina is the worst possible vision. It is a nightmare vision of North Carolina, and it doesn't matter if you pretend to believe in love or you pretend to believe in a society where everybody respects each other, where you believe in science, where you believe in truth, where you believe in children going to school and studying and learning. You can hold up these various ideals and say various keywords and use certain phrases and wink certain ways and wiggle your body in your nice little business lawyer suit or whatever. You can go around acting like a political leader and say certain things, and people will give you credit. At least they will not call you out on being a fascist and believing in unconstitutional totalitarian government and police oppression and arbitrary arrest and detention of persons, as well as the scientific, medical oppression and manipulation of people, which is psychiatry. The phrase which I recur to, and I say this with all due gravity and all intended purposefulness, and I'm prepared to debate this question with Mr. Stein and anyone else who wants to. My word and my phrase for North Carolina and in the United States in this year of 2024, and I say this having seen the jails, prisons, and hospitals of North Carolina, my phrase, which obviously I wasn't there back in the 30s in Europe, but what I think about North Carolina as a born and raised North Carolinian who loves his home state very much, what I say is that North Carolina, under Roy Cooper, perhaps it's his fault, perhaps it isn't, but under Governor Roy Cooper, North Carolina has turned into a fascist police state. It is possible to say that this tendency was visible prior to Roy Cooper, and of course he was Attorney General and thus responsible for the interpretation and enforcement and manifestation of the laws. So he gave great shape, and made his imprint upon our form of government in the past 24 years. Governor Cooper has. But there is a deeper tendency, which no politician of any party and almost nobody of any description, save perhaps, let me try to slow down here, for me, I've been treated and considered both a criminal and insane man for holding the views that I do about Mr. Stein. And so when I was at Cherry Hospital, being held as a prisoner in a building built in 2014 in Goldsboro, where they lock you up and you can't get out, and they force you to take drugs, which are so despicable and so disgusting and so miserable that I do not wish to speak about them, although of course there is a great literature and I've written elsewhere about this subject. So if I wanted to hold Mr. Stein personally responsible for the fact that I was poisoned with antipsychotic drugs at the psychiatric hospital, if it's not a poison, then how come I'm not allowed to refuse it? I think that it's fair to hold the Attorney General responsible for what was being done with the blessing and with the cooperation of an embedded Assistant Attorney General, an embedded AAG at Cherry Hospital, who, when there was various court, they had what they called Cherry Court at Cherry Hospital, the courtroom down in the first floor of the hospital. But when somebody at Cherry Hospital had court, so-called. They would tell you that you have court, or sometimes they wouldn't tell you, but they would just do it without you. But Josh Stein's subordinate got to be at my court dates when I did not, when I was being held as a prisoner at Cherry Hospital in Goldsboro in Wayne County, where my grandmother, was from Wayne County, was from the border, the line between Wayne and Duplin counties. And I used to go have Thanksgiving and many other visits on the farm in Mount Olive nearby. And it pained me greatly to look out and see the landscape of eastern North Carolina, which, where three of my four grandparents originate from, to see the landscape of eastern North Carolina from behind a fence, a very tall fence, and being able to go out for short periods every day and experience the climate and the scenery of North Carolina with a fence, and with being able even to see wildlife and deer running around on the other side of the fence in my grandmother's native Wayne County. I resented, to use a mild word, or use a straightforward word, I resented very much the fact that that this was being done to me, not in some crazy foreign land or whatever, where I didn't understand the laws, but in my own home place, in my ancestral home place even, where I did understand the laws, the land, and the people. And I knew nobody in Goldsboro and Wayne County, anywhere near that hospital, had accused me of anything wrong. I'd been taken there, from Wilmington, where I was being held after being taken forcibly, unlawfully, from the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. But in fact, what I'm going to say about Josh Stein is that all of the scandalous and intolerable things which have been done to me by the state, one can almost sort of leave that aside. And the truth is that it's not the fact that they've done such terrible criminal, almost international war criminals kind of wrongs to me. It's not necessarily that they broke the law, although of course they did, because even if they didn't, we would still have reason to reject Mr. Stein, whatever we may think about Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson or the Republicans in the General Assembly or Donald Trump or whatever you want. What I'm saying is that it doesn't matter what you think about anything else, that for reasons which involve logic, philosophy, the law, aesthetics, culture, religion, spirituality, if it's different from religion, common sense, true science as distinguished from the sort of scientificalized sort of religion, fake religion, secular sort of neo-religion of people who think that who basically the religion of not to engage in anti-COVID conspiracy theories or whatever. I myself have been to China and think that the China conspiracy theory about COVID might have something to it, but nevertheless, Mr. Stein and his Democratic co-religionists, I say this as a Democrat myself, of course, reinvented the Democratic Party in the era of Donald Trump and during the Trump administration and during COVID-19. They reinvented the Democratic Party in order to make new values and new ideas and new rhetoric stand in for previous ideas of the Democratic Party. And so it was a far cry from the Democratic Party in the era of Jim Hunt and Bill Clinton, and of even of Attorney General Mike Easley. And so we have the period when I grew up in North Carolina, in Wilmington, North Carolina, and went elsewhere in North Carolina to summer camp and to my family's farm near Mount Olive, to my grandmother's and aunts and uncles' houses in Fayetteville, to many places in North Carolina. I remember North Carolina the way it was in the 90s when Jim Hunt was governor and when Bill Clinton was president, and those were Democrats too. And that is what I was raised to think of as the Democratic Party, as the North Carolina Democratic Party, and as the identity and values of the state of North Carolina. Mr. Stein is older than me, yet somehow he doesn't seem to have anything, even a fraction of the same political or cultural or historical memory. He doesn't even seem to recall how different things were in his lifetime, and yet he touts his own origins in North Carolina, which are not. I don't even really know. I guess he's from Raleigh. I do not know which part of North Carolina he is from, but I will say his accent is not. He does not speak with. I mean, some people say that I don't, but I would disagree. I speak with a sort of Englishified North Carolina accent. Mr. Stein does not really speak with a North Carolina accent. He speaks with, with a sort of generic lawyer accent, although not even proper Harvard lawyer accent. The phrase Harvard lawyer is often used to describe somebody who knows, even if they're not necessarily truthful or virtuous. A Harvard lawyer is somebody who knows how to talk. Mr. Stein, as we will see in the following statements in his own words, Joshua Stein, North Carolina's Attorney General and candidate for governor, nominee of the Democratic Party in a sham primary, sham contest for the nomination of the Democratic Party, back when Joe Biden was still considered the leader of that party and the leader of the country. The day after the infamous debate, which people wrongly think was the downfall of Joe Biden, or the moment when it all was brought to a close, it was over a long time. It was over before it's even started with the Biden administration, for reasons which we'll try to explore here in our criticisms of Josh Stein, because one of the basic points, perhaps the most important point that I'm trying to make, is that there can be no democracy, whether it's capital D or small d. There can be no democracy of any sort, if we take away democracy, all the other parts of our supposed American system disappear too, or at least nobody wants to talk about America without democracy. But yet we all talk a big game with respect to democracy, and yet we drag democracy down in the dirt and basically beat it until it's bleeding and screaming and kicking. And democracy is being tortured to death by people who claim to be doing what's good for democracy or defending democracy. I myself have believed in democracy my entire life, and have always had a very idealistic and earnest idea of what our American system is. Even though I am a communist and a Marxist, and have been since I was a young man, I believe in the promise of America and of the system of government which people in North Carolina fought and died in a revolution to establish. North Carolina being the first state to join the American Revolution and to declare independence from Great Britain because of tyranny. So what we're going to do, as I say, because of course when I talk in my own words and my own voice, people try to denigrate or disparage me, say I'm crazy or whatever. I may be crazy, but Josh Stein is both stupid and wicked, and we can tell this by what he himself says. I'm going to quote from a crucial day in the political history of this year, both for North Carolina and for the United States generally, which is the hearing of I guess it was the 27th or the 27th, 28th of June this year, the morning after, the day after, the Friday after the so-called dismal debate, or whatever you want to call it, the point where people say that Biden lost it. I was watching this debate in jail, and it was hilarious. It was almost an uplifting moment in the whole sort of jail drama, because everybody in HPOD in the Hanover County Detention Facility was watching the damn debate, and the officers too, and everybody could tell what took weeks, or what took however long, many days to set in, among Democrats, among Republicans, or whatever. The clearest perception that was the last straw for Joseph Biden was visible in the H block of the Hanover County Detention Facility, where you just happened to find American and North Carolinian dissident, radical left-wing dissident Dawson Gage. So everybody in jail was, just like, oh my God, it's over for Biden. That's an expression in the language of people who are imprisoned in this country. It's over for you. People say it's over. It's over. It is over. It was over before it even started with Joe Biden, and it is over before it has even started with Josh Stein. And we're just waiting for him to realize that, and for people to realize that there are alternatives in North Carolina. And I make my own case for myself as an alternative, not because I'm perfect and not because I have solutions to everybody's problems, I'm not going to exert myself too much to be elected governor of North Carolina, but I would not refuse the office. Attorney General and gubernatorial candidate Josh Stein says the following. This is the famous rally, where he tried to rally and salvage President Biden when President Biden and his diehard supporter, uncritical, completely fawning, adoring, it's one thing to defer to somebody who has seniority. It's another thing to let a man who is visibly losing his wits and his reason, and who in fact didn't really have them in the first place, at least not as far as many Democrats in this country from other places other than Delaware, who didn't spend their whole life basically sizzling and soaring through the corruption of Washington, with great cunning and great, oftentimes political shrewdness and insight. President Biden has definitely done something in this country. I just don't think that it's clear at all that we can call it public service, or that we can credit it with being democracy. I continue to make my point, which is the point of this video, which is why I'm making a video which is so sprawling and so unlike this. I really do need to make this point in public, on the record, from house arrest, that I think that Mr. Stein is a fascist. On the day after the debate performance, the news media, including the Associated Press, which I was able to read from jail with my so-called jail tablet, which had the AP Newswire on it, I was able to follow events in the country and in North Carolina from the AP Newswire, and with occasional supplements from public radio and radio news, which I didn't like to read because of my issues with WHQR, which is related to the Josh Stein, also known as Josh Stein's favorite radio station. But anyway, that's for later discussion. When Biden and Josh Stein got together for this hearing, and I guess Roy Cooper was there too, and there is this attitude among Democrats, which is still present, even in the much improved and much more encouraging and hopeful, to use that word from President Obama's term. It is indeed a more hopeful situation, but as I said to my friend Eleanor Benami in a letter from prison, hope, it can be better than despair, but hope by itself can be an indication that you're lost, or that you don't know where you're going, or that you don't have control over your situation. Hope is the province and the consolation of somebody who doesn't necessarily have control over their lives or their situation, individually or collectively. The reason why Democrats go around selling hope, pitching hope as and not just hope, in a sort of handful of propositions and certain ideas like education, sometimes wage equity, sometimes, with Biden, you got to see, that of course Democrats will just say anything. And of course, I say this, I am a North Carolina Democrat. I'll make it clear, I'm a Marxist and a communist and a North Carolina Democrat, and see no contradiction. I believe that the Democratic Party is a party where people who agree that change is necessary, and that experimentation and reform and in deliberate action in government and in society, the Democratic Party has always been my party. But I do not accept that these people, Mr. Stein and Mr. Biden, were ever qualified to speak as its leaders. So I've spoken for the last 19 minutes to prepare to just dissect a few things that Josh Stein said at this supposedly uplifting and inspiring rally. I'm not going to call it a Nuremberg rally, but it's a pretty disgusting and upsetting rally when you think that this is supposed to be the people, and these are the people that were, that are supposed to be the more advanced, the more deserving. I mean, the Republicans, while of course they have their faults, many of them, they're, as far as the program, the tone, I am not advocating for Mark Robinson. I'm not advocating for Donald Trump. Make no mistake. I'm just trying to tell the truth and to pose a consistent, critical, philosophical approach, which basically is centered in constitutional law and freedom, which makes perfect sense because that's what I do. I practice the freedoms of speech and press as a poet and journalist, and so anybody who doesn't believe in those basically is a threat to my livelihood and to my identity, which I must resist in a way that I guess makes professionals uncomfortable, which makes me feel a little bit better when I'm done with such exercises as this. Quote from Mr. Stein.